for the second. India have won the test match. India have won the series. They're going to get back for two.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the 81 All Out podcast. I'm Siddhartha Vaidyanathan at Sidvi on Twitter. And I'm with my co-host, Mahesh, who is cornered on Twitter. Hi, Mahesh.
Hi, Sidvi.
Hi. So today we are delighted to be joined by a special guest from Pakistan, the historian, author, and cultural critic, Nadeem F Paracha. NFP, as he is fondly known, has authored 5 books and writes a regular column for Pakistan's largest English language daily, Dawn. He is Nadeem F Paracha on Twitter, and I would urge all of you to give him a follow and take a look at all the wisdom and insight that he puts out. Hi, Nadeem. Thanks so much for joining.
Hi, Siddharth. Thank you very much for inviting me here.
Oh, wonderful. It's an honor for us, actually. And I've been reading your pieces for a while now, and both on cricket and not on other topics, and have learned a lot. So it's great to chat with you. So let's begin by bringing in your, introduction to cricket. What are your early memories of the game, the formative experiences?
I think looking back, I think it started in 1973 when I was just 5 years old, had turned 5, and England was touring Pakistan. And that was also the first time, I believe, when a test match was being broadcast live on the state-owned television, Pakistan, PTV, Pakistan Television. And I remember I was just 5, and in those days, as kids, we used to play, normal cricket where one guy bats, one guy bowls, and everybody fields, and everybody waits for their turn. And when I saw that series, I think just one, I don't know which test match it was. I remember the tour was England tour 1973, and I don't know which test match, first, second, or third. So when I watched it on TV, and I was a bit confused because, especially after seeing 2 batsmen on the crease, And I asked my mother, why are there 2 batsmen on the pitch? And I thought that one was batting and the other one on the non-striker's end was waiting for his turn. Like we as kids used to sit down on stairs and wait for our time to bat. So that was my first introduction. I had no clue what that was, what Test cricket was. I was just 5 years old. The real introduction actually came about 3 years later, when I was 7 or 8 years old, during the West Indian team's tour of Pakistan, and a cousin, my father's cousin, he was a huge cricket fan, and he was friends with this huge, big-time industrialist in Karachi, and by the age of 7, I was quite interested in cricket, even though I still didn't know much about it. But so this cousin, my father's cousin, took me and a few my other cousins who were older than I was to this party, which was hosted by this industrialist in an area which is about 5-10 minutes away from my house. It's called the Old Clifton area. It used to be a very happening place in those days. With lots of eateries and little bars and stuff like that. It's no more there. It's just very very close to the sea. So this industrialist had this huge house over there where he had invited the West Indian and Pakistani teams. And this was, I think, during the last test match of the series in Karachi. And so both the teams were invited, and we as kids with our little autograph books were there. And I remember very well meeting Rohan Kanai, who was in the side, hadn't retired by then. Then there was Clive Lloyd. I got his autograph, and a few other West Indian players. I think one was Holder, no relation to the current West Indian player Holder. Then there was Julian, I think, with a huge afro. So anyways, and then I also got autograph from a few Pakistani players, especially Majid Khan, who was used to open the innings with Mushtaq Mohammad in those days. And the most interesting bit about that 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 event was a cousin of mine and I went into this study. It looked like a study in there to sort of check out our autographs. And as we entered the study, we saw this guy. I couldn't recognize him. He was just sitting there alone and quietly drinking away his little scotch and stuff quietly. And then he looked at us and he just called us over and he said, "Okay, you want my autograph?" We said, "Yeah." We still couldn't recognize him. And he autographed our books and he wrote all the best from Wasim Raja. So that was Wasim Raja. And the next day we went to the stadium, Karachi Stadium, and Raja cracked a massive century. It was wonderful. That is when I started to understand what Test cricket was and what cricket was and how many teams play and which are cricket playing nations and which are non-official, all that stuff. And I started to buy a magazine which hasn't been published for the last 20, 25 years, but it used to be very famous in those days. It was called The Pakistan Cricketer, and was published by this guy called Riaz Ahmed Mansoori, and Hanif Mohammed used to be the chief editor, and Ghulam Hamid Bhatti, etc. So that was my first introduction. I think the interest really started to build during Pakistan's tour of West Indies and Australia in 1976-77, when Pakistan for the first time beat Australia in Australia, and by squaring the series in January 1977 in Sydney. I remember by then it was, I think, 1976. Okay, so I was still very young, but we all woke up early in the morning to watch Pakistan win that match. And then the whole Packer thing started, and that's how I got into cricket. Even though I was also into a lot of other sports at school, and I was interested in especially hockey, which fortunately in those days, both India and Pakistan were fantastic in. But that sort of fell away. I'm still very interested in hockey, even though it's now radically changed, and squash and other sports. But cricket became sort of overshadowed other sports eventually.
Wonderful. So I'd love to talk about that season when Pakistan went to Australia and West Indies. But before that, many of our listeners may not really be aware of the talent and magic and aura of Wasim Raja. And you have written about him, of course, in various columns. And you have spoken about how Imran Khan and several others thought he was one of the most talented cricketers to have played for Pakistan. Tell us a bit about Wasim Raja and how it was just watching him. I mean, I too haven't watched him. I was too young, when he was playing. But the little bit I've seen on YouTube and the bits I've read from you, it seems that there was something extraordinary about the man.
Yeah, it was. I think Wasim Raja was way ahead of his time. The kind of cricket he played, he wasn't something like. He's been called that. Maybe he was the Afridi of the 1970s, early 80s. He wasn't really like a Shahid Afridi as such. He could play a very watchful innings when needed as well. But temperamentally, I think he was ahead of his time in a lot of ways. The way he approached his cricket, the way, because I met him twice. And like I said, as a kid, as a 7-8-year-old kid, and then I met him again a few years after he retired. I bumped into him somewhere, and I actually almost convinced him to sort of sell me his famous bat, which he used while making all those runs in West Indies in 1977. He made over 500 runs, and at that time, he also held the record of hitting the most sixes in a Test series, which was, I think, equaled by Flintoff many years later. Anyway, so Wasim Raja was the way players. I talked to a few players which I know. There's Sikandar Bakht, I was talking to the former Pakistani swing base bowler. He had some great things to say, and the former Pakistan captain Mushtaq Mohammad wrote a terrific book, terrific autobiography, and in that he also explains the problems he had with Raja, even though Raja was so extremely talented, but was extremely moody and didn't take his talent as seriously as he should have. And Imran, in his first biography, I remember, writes that he was stunned when he first saw Wasim Raja play during club cricket in Lahore, where they both sort of, I don't know, club side or a college side, or a university side, when he saw Wasim Raja play so effortlessly, and Imran was sad that he couldn't sort of fully realize his potential. So he was quite a character. He was quite a character because, you see, like I said, I've just met him twice. And I've just, what I've written about Raja is through what other players who played with him have told me or written about him. But my first interaction, like I said, was very interesting. And there's another incident which happened during the match in which he cracked that century against the West Indies. A day before that, we were sitting in an enclosure which was near what was called a student stand or students enclosure. I'm sure India used to have those in their stadium as well in those days. So I remember Raja, just laughing and joking with the students, and the students totally went mad over it. And I remember the very next day, some Urdu newspapers, and this is what my father told me, some Urdu newspapers sort of accused Wasim Raja of being on the field and doing these things because he was drunk. So Wasim Raja comes in and smashes this century. I think it's just to shut them up. So he was always in and out of the side. Mushtaq, I think was the captain who handled him the best. Other captains just didn't know how to sort of handle such a temperamental and moody chap. And by the way, if you really want to see Wasim Raja, unfortunately, you're right. There's not much out there on YouTube on Wasim Raja's or any recording of Wasim Raja's centuries as such. But recently, someone uploaded some highlights of the fifth Test match of the 1977 Pakistan-West Indies series in West Indies, and it's the 4-day highlight. The quality of the download is not that good, but you can easily see Raja's talent because he made over 500 runs in that series and hit about 14 or 15 sixes. I'm not sure, but it was a world record in those days. So it's out there, and if you were interested, you can just search it, and you see how much talent that person had. Because Sikandar Bakht once told me about a few years ago that during the same series, Pakistan were like not performing well in an innings, and I think Asif Iqbal got out, and it was Raja's turn to go in. And they couldn't find him in the dressing room. They just couldn't find him. And it turned out that he was outside the dressing room, standing with a group of spectators and smoking away. And suddenly he was called in. He put up he padded up, went in. And first ball from Joel Garner or Colin Croft, I'm not sure, he smashes him straight over his head for a 6. So that was the kind of player he was.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I'll definitely search that YouTube clip and link it. That'll be awesome.
Do that. But it's amazing. Yeah.
Sorry, one related question on this. We were talking about it before you came in as well, on why such a mercurial cricketer with such great sort of intermittent exploits is not quite celebrated. I'm not sure about Pakistan, but at least outside of Pakistan, such a romantic cricketer, such a great flamboyant player is not celebrated probably, in comparison with other similar players. Like Someone like Kim Hughes has had a book written on him, for instance.
Yeah.
How is it in Pakistan? Is he still a mighty personality? Someone like Salim Durrani in India? Is he talked about so much in Pakistan even now?
Well, there are fans like me who remembered his batting, who remembered his exploits, and who hugely who hugely admired him. But unfortunately, you see, we've seen, and it's always been the case, I think, especially after the late 1970s, that the cricketers who wanted to be known even after they retired, they invested a lot in their PR and how to be written about or to be talked about. But it seemed Wasim Raja was never interested in this thing. He was just interested in just playing. He wasn't really interested in making a lot of money as well. Because remember, when the whole Kerry Packer thing happened and this Australian tycoon, he was offering loads of money to the most talented and top players of every country. 5 Pakistani top players did go. There was Imran, there was Asif Iqbal, there was Saeed Majid and Mushtaq. They opted to sort of not play for Pakistan or were not allowed to play for Pakistan and signed up with Peckham, and Raja didn't go. Even though at that point in time in 1977, he had one of the highest averages in 1976 and 77. He was one of the top players, top batsmen, middle order batsmen in the side, and he didn't go. This says a lot. I think he came from an okay well-to-do background. He just wanted to play cricket the way he wanted to play cricket. So he never invested, I think, in sort of in the kind of things that are required for people to talk about him. There's no book that came out after he retired. There's nothing. The only program which came on television on Wasim Raja ever, unfortunately, was when he died at the young age of 54. And it was strange that a lot of people didn't really know what they were talking about until some channels invited people like his old playing colleagues like Sarfraz Nawaz and Harun Rashid, etc. So they actually said what this guy was all about. That is when people started saying, oh, that was one Wasim Raja, because by then people knew more about his younger brother, who wasn't even half as talented as Wasim. It's like Ramiz Raja, because Ramiz Raja, even though not a great batsman, but is quite famous as a cricket commentator, but not even half as talented as his elder brother. And Ramiz himself will agree to that. But people didn't know that Ramiz was the brother of one Wasim Hassan Raja, who used to be hugely popular with a lot of young cricket enthusiasts back in the late 1970s and early 1980s. And there are places where he was famous. Like Wasim Raja wasn't all that famous, let's say in Australia or in England, but he was huge in West Indies, as Tony Cozier, the former West Indian commentator, wrote in his book. He was huge with the West Indies, especially due to the 1977 series. So that was how he was. He wasn't really interested in fame, it seemed. Never sort of invested much in it.
So back to that season when Pakistan went to Australia and West Indies. I mean, what a time it must have been to be so young and following that team. Because first of all, to draw a series in Australia and then come within a whisker of drawing a series in West Indies, or some may even say winning it, because that's how close that series was. But just the nature of the personalities and the talent. I mean, you mentioned a few names, but Majid, Asif Iqbal, Imran Khan, Wasim Raja, my God, that's like a dream come true for a 10, 12-year-old, right?
It is. It's that, I mean, the charisma, the firepower, the character of their team, of course, it will draw young people in. And they were all amazing, charismatic, very... they had a lot of traction, these players, as cricketers and as personalities. And Imran also wrote, and I agree with him, that is perhaps one of the strongest sides Pakistan has ever had. Picking 11 players used to be pretty tough. and some very good players used to lose out. Like, for example, Javed Miandad played just one test during the West Indies side, West Indian leg of the tour. And Raja used to come at number 7.
And Raja didn't play in Australia.
He didn't play in Australia, and that was another. I remember. You see, there are a lot of stories associated with Raja. I just wish he was still alive, and he could talk about it now with a laugh. He was plundering runs during the side matches in Australia and wasn't getting a chance. So during the third Test match, Pakistan were 1 down, and Raja, just before the last Test match, I think during a side match against a very powerful Queensland side, and in those days, even side matches used to have a lot of frontline players because Lilly was playing again for Queensland, and Raja went there and sort of smashed a very quick, fast, hard-hitting century, and was sure to play in Sydney, and. Then Mushtaq and vice captain Asif Iqbal decided that they rather play it safe, and they got in Harun Rashid to play again. Raja was so furious that he smashed up his room, broke all the mirrors in the room, and sort of stumbled out and started accusing and abusing the manager. Forgot the manager's name. He was quite a character himself, but he was sort of then
Shuja-uddin, right?
Shuja. Yeah. What a character! But the perfect man to have as a manager for that team. So it wasn't Shuja. So Mushtaq writes in his book that he explained it to Raja that it wasn't Shuja who got him dropped. It was a decision, and this was why they were taking decision, because he wasn't responsible batsman, and they wanted more depth and more dependency on batsmen. Well, Pakistan went on to win the match, and that is when I would say Pakistan actually really came on the international cricket map by beating then in Australia in those days was definitely number 1 side in the world. And we're talking about a period of cricket where there were no helmets and there was no other special protection, just a box in front and maybe gloves and pads, and the wickets weren't used to be covered, so they were like minefields almost. And I remember there was Sydney, and Imran took 12 wickets. That was also Imran coming of age, so that was quite a match. That is what drew in lots of Pakistanis, young Pakistanis like me, into this game, and they because you see we were more used to Pakistan winning in hockey, and cricket was okay, fine. Cricket, there were bigger stars. They looked like stars, unlike the hockey players who looked very simple, and they were very simple. But that is when we started to believe, Pakistanis can actually win test matches.
One of the big reasons for also the popularity of those cricketers and that time was also the effect of television, right? Because television came to Pakistan earlier than it probably did to India. I mean, at least...
Pakistan, it came in 1964 in Pakistan.
Exactly. So this, the fact that the final day of the Sydney Test was shown, and also was the West Indies series broadcast as well?
They never used to sort of broadcast live stuff a whole day. They used to show certain portions of the game live, maybe an hour or two through via satellite or whatever they used to call it in those days. West Indies series, I remember watching it. The Test match Pakistan won, that was, I think, the 4th Test match on the 5th day, which Pakistan won. Last moment, dying moments of the. It's just unfortunate that series. That Sydney Test match and that West Indian series is really not out there. I don't know why isn't there. Fine, I can understand the West Indians didn't have the kind of money the Australians have, so maybe the recordings had got lost. But the irony is that the Sydney Test match is not available, and there's some great guy managed to get that. The test match I'm talking about, the 5th test match highlights of the West Indian series on YouTube, even though that was a test match which Pakistan lost. But you can see that the amazing part of that those highlights is that you can see Garner and Croft coming in. It was their first series, and they were fast. And you can see Imran, who had taken 12 wickets in the Sydney Test match. He took, I think, 10 or 5 wickets at least in an innings in that Test match. And the best part to me was this huge, this long partnership between Asif Iqbal and Wasim Raja, which almost saved the game for Pakistan. But unfortunately, both got out. And Pakistan lost that match. So yes, TV did play a huge role. And even though I remember the PTV used to regularly broadcast hockey games, and I remember it used to live show us the boxing matches, especially involving Muhammad Ali, the great. And the cricket came a bit late. Like I said, the first time a test match was shown live in Pakistan was in 1973 during the English tour. And till about 1982, they used to show portions of a day's play live from abroad. But the local, I think that the local series were started being shown regularly from 1975 onward. And I remember the 1978 series against India, which took place after 17 years. That was quite an event in this country, quite an event. And TV played a massive role. And cricket just exploded after that.
Yeah, that series as well. I mean, that, of course, was such a famous series, Pakistan winning 2-0. And also the one-dayers. But there's another, I think, allied aspect to that isn't that also around the time when commentary, there came in Urdu commentary, which then popularized the game that much more in the smaller towns.
Absolutely. 1978. Actually, the Urdu commentary started, I think, during the 1990-77 series, during the English tour of Pakistan in 1977, which took place at a very volatile time in the country because a government had been overthrown by a military dictator, General Zia-ul-Haq. And that was the series where the Urdu commentary came in. And it sounded weird in the beginning, but then it picked up because by then cricket had started to become very famous outside big cities. So Urdu commentary did make sense. That was when the first time it happened, 1977, during the English tour of Pakistan, which was a very boring tour. All the test matches were drawn, and one of the test matches was almost abandoned due to rioting in Lahore.
How do you say it's a boring tour?
Politically, it wasn't. It wasn't even. It was depressing. There was a lot of violence during that. It was the same test match where Mudassir Nazar made I think the slowest century, which is still a record, slowest century. I think he made 114 in how many minutes? I don't know. It was the most boring thing. And a lot of top players had gone to Packer. There were no 5 players there. And there was almost a new team under a very bad captain, Wasim Bari. And he would agree that he was a terrible captain. But it was a terrible series. Anyway, cricketing-wise, it was boring. Otherwise, it was depressing and violent, etc.
I think, to even imagine an England-Pakistan series to be boring is beyond me, because I don't think the two teams have ever played a series without controversy. But one thing, though, which I find very interesting, and many have written about it as well, about that 1977-78 time, about how the fact that cricket was on television, live on television, was actually a big help for the dictator. The military dictator, because then people were not out on the streets. Now, this is an angle I never would have thought of until I read about it, but it's fascinating.
It is true, actually. You see, he was a very clever dictator, and he would pose himself to be an idiot. And a lot of people thought he was an idiot. He wasn't an idiot. Had he been an idiot, he would have been around for 11 years. But he was a very clever guy. He understood television very well. He understood the power of television. And that's why you see a lot of young people will be surprised. And I did write about it in one of few columns that, during Zia's period, it was a very conservative period. Zia himself was a very conservative guy. And a lot of a lot of laws were being passed, ordinances were being passed, which were turning Pakistan society on its head. So a lot of bad things were happening as well. But at the same time, it is also called PTV's golden age. But we had some of the finest soap operas and TV serials, Urdu TV serials that were being made during that time, because they understood that just to keep people happy, television is, because he cannot keep put a mullah out there like started to happen in Iran after 1979. It wasn't anything like that in Pakistan. We had music shows, we had Nazia and Zohaib, we had other pop stars like Alamgir and Shahi coming in. Fine, they couldn't do certain things, but they were there. Then we had some fantastic plays going on, and there was a lot of cricket and hockey on television, a lot of it. Then squash came in. And yes, I think that was part of his plan to keep them busy. And Pakistan, since after 1977, it won in Australia and almost defeated, especially after it defeated India in 1978, started getting a lot of tours and tests with countries and started playing much more cricket. Like, for example, for the first time, Pakistan played a six-match series, test match series, which is now inconceivable at in this day and age. During 1979, that was a very interesting tour, which was every match, even the side matches were broadcast live on Pakistan television. India won 2-0, and there were a lot of controversies regarding Imran and Raja and all these things, and Asif Iqbal. And those controversies, interestingly, I keep hearing about those controversies still from people like Sarfraz Nawaz. And that tour, a lot of people still say, was the turning point of how cricket was changing and how cricketers had started to see cricket in a different way. And some people say that made a lot of cricketers very selfish and very, very self-conscious. And that is when people like Imran Khan actually started getting that tag of being a playboy or whatever. And that is also when cricket in Pakistan started to outsprint hockey in popularity, and cricket started getting a lot of more money. But that was another interesting series, by the way, the 1979 Pakistan-India series, the six-test series. That's very interesting. There are a lot of answers there to a lot of questions that are still being asked today.
So interesting in the sense of the controversies, or in terms of
controversies. Like, for example, every time there is a debate on match fixing, for example, every time.
Yeah.
At least in Pakistan, there are a lot of people, especially the former fast bowler Sarfraz Nawaz. He always starts with the sixth test match during the 1979 India-Pakistan series, and he accuses Asif Iqbal of fixing the game. And
this was during the toss, right? When he and Vishwanath went out to toss. Yeah.
Yes. And I think, I don't know exactly what he did. I think he declared too soon as well, and Pakistan, something like that. And so it always starts with 1979. That Asif Iqbal did it. Even though, personally speaking, I was a huge Asif Iqbal fan, I don't think he did it. I don't see how he did it. But anyways, I'm also a fan of Sarfraz Nawaz, so I don't know whom to, even though Sarfraz has never sort of shown any evidence. But that talk about match fixing, a lot of people think actually starts in the 1990s with Salim Malik's and Azharuddin's and Hansi Konyev. No, it always starts with 1979. They think that it started in 1979, and right after 1979, you start having cricket games in Sharjah, for example. These little small games started happening in Sharjah, and again, Asif Iqbal was involved in organizing them, and they became huge. And we also know that in Sharjah, in one of the tournaments, Javed Miandad writes in his book that when Imran was captain, that he got, someone told him that almost 3 or 4 Pakistani players have sold out to a bookie, and Imran and Javed had to force the players to bet on Pakistan, because if they lost, then they would lose the money. So these things happened. So, but it always starts with 1979. Imran became that quote unquote sex symbol, playboy, etc., after 1979. And there is a lot of truth in what was written, what he was up to in India in 1979. And Raja had his own things going on, even though he wasn't into film actresses or anything. He was more into drinking. Unfortunately, he couldn't make a century. I think he got out twice in the 90s, but he was the high scorer in that series. But it was a terrible. Asif Iqbal was a terrible captain. He wasn't a natural leader at all. Mushtaq would have still been a better choice, even if it could have been his last series as captain. But the way he was pushed out, at a drop of a hat, due to what he says is politics done by Asif Iqbal and Majid Khan. So I don't know, but they're still friends though. So that was an interesting series.
Yeah, one of the things you can tell us about is Mushtaq. I mean, if you, today, I don't know how it is in Pakistan, but generally, if, talking about captaincy in Pakistan, he seems to be one of those who was slightly more sidelined. Say, of course, Imran gets the most play, and Misbah-ul-Haq in the last decade or so, of course, went on to be the most successful captain numbers-wise. But tell us about Mushtaq, because after Kardar, he seems to have been the next great Pakistan captain. And given the personalities he had to manage, he seems to have done really, really well.
There are two things, absolutely. There are two things, I think. Nothing was coming close to what Kardar was in the 1950s. Kardar had won 6 test matches, drawn 6 or something lost 6 and drawn how many more. So there were so many captains coming in between. Nobody was coming near. As I said, Pakistan didn't win a test match between 1964 and 1973, and then not between 1973 and 1976 during New Zealand. It was Mushtaq who came in. Now, the thing is fine. One can say Mushtaq had a terrific team. He definitely had one of the strongest squads ever created by Pakistan. No doubt about it. He had Imran, he had Sarfraz, he had this new bowler coming in, Sikandar Bath. And the batting was outlandishly amazing. You had established opener Sadiq Majid. You had Zahir coming at number one down. You had Miandad. You had Haroon. You had Asif, Mushtaq. You had Raja coming down. You had Imran, Sarfraz, Salim Altaf, etc. And you had a pretty okay spinner in Iqbal Qasim. He also made his debut under Mushtaq. So, yeah, he had a great team. But one has to understand, no disrespect to what Imran did and what especially Misbah did. We might talk about it later. But Mushtaq was up against, I think, one of the scariest, strongest sides in Test cricket. I'm talking about the West Indians with their battery of fast bowlers. They were really emerging. I'm talking about the Australians with Thompson and Lillies and the Chappells, even though Ian Chappell had retired by then. Then we had a pretty strong England side, and that was bare knuckle cricket. That's why I'm fascinated by that era. It was like totally raw, So winning in those conditions and turning a team of amazingly talented individuals into a winning squad, I think that Mushtaq did pretty well. In fact, he did it brilliantly. So yes, I agree that unfortunately he doesn't get sort of praise he deserves as Imran does, or later on Misbah does. Misbah still does. But it was under Mushtaq that Pakistan actually transformed into a world-beating side and started being noticed as a team to be taken seriously, and not just a bunch of individuals playing for themselves.
Yeah, so it was also under Mushtaq in 1976 that there was this whole uproar and controversy about players standing up for their rights and saying we need to be paid more. And they had this, they were dropped, and then they came back, and all that.
The whole team was dropped. Mushtaq was made captain in 1976, right? And he replaced Intikhab Alam. During the very first test match as captain, during the very first day when the teams were announced by the selectors, there was no Javed Miandad and no Asif Iqbal during the first test match. This is when New Zealand was in Pakistan. and it was Mushtaq's first test match. And he said he will not play unless the selectors played Javed Miandad and Asif Iqbal. And there was huge fight between Mushtaq and Kardar, who was the chairman of the Pakistan Cricket Board, which used to be called BCCP. Kardar almost dropped him. But anyway, he managed to get Miandad and Asif in. And the thing is, Miandad and Asif actually not only saved Pakistan by making centuries, but Pakistan went on to win the game. So, and during the second test match, Mushtaq said, okay, I think we should be paid more. He used the same logic what Ian Chappell used with the Australian board. In those days, a lot of people were coming to the stadium to watch Test cricket because Test cricket had become very exciting due to all these fast bowlers and all these young, hip cricketers coming in, dashing players, playboys and long hair and stuff like that. So a lot of people were coming in and they were attracted by Test cricket. And the boards were making pretty okay money, but they weren't paying the players as much as they deserved. So Mushtaq did exactly what Ian Chappell did in 1976 by asking the board to share the money. But the Pakistani board, as the Australian board, didn't agree, and neither did the Pakistani board. And Mushtaq said, fine, then I won't play. And he was, even by his second test match as captain, he had gotten the loyalty of a lot of players, and 10 players refused to play. They said, fine, we agree with Mushtaq, we need to be. So what Kardar did was, he got in 11 other players. So at one point during the second test match in Hyderabad, Miandad writes in his book, there were 22 players in the Pakistan dressing room. And and nobody knew who was playing, who wasn't. So yeah, so he fought for his players. So this is true. There were 22 players sitting in the Pakistani dressing room.
Isn't that the game when I think Osman Samiuddin writes in his book that Glenn Turner asked before the toss, who's coming out to toss?
Exactly. This is exactly what happened. Exactly what happened. I have an issue of the cricketer with me still during that time. And I remember there's an article written by the late Gul Hamid Bhatti. He was a fantastic sports journalist of his time. And the headline is like, hands off Mushtaq. So Mushtaq, even during he won, and he had sort of not only gotten loyalty from his players, but also from the press. So he was on a roll already, and very early. So it was fun. But again, the same to Pakistan, the same team almost didn't make it to Australian West Indies. He still wanted more money. And Kardar again refused and dropped Mushtaq and made Inzamam captain and selected a totally new squad of 14 people. And at the time's Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto had to sort of intervene and tell him to agree to whatever these guys are asking for. And he got it. And yet, ironically, Mushtaq and 4 others decided to still go to Packers because they still thought that they were being underpaid. But those were strange times.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, though, I mean, given the nature of the team, given the personalities, how they went against the board, how they were willing to stand up against a person as high profile as Kardar, what was the attitude of that team like towards the politics of the day? Because Pakistan was going through an intense political ferment too, but I don't see, at least in my reading, any major kind of statement or any stand taken by the players in that regard. I mean, today we talk a lot about cricket and politics and the intermeshing of the two. I was interested in finding out how it was then, especially with the takeover by the general and things like that.
Yeah, it was interesting because I did a whole feature on this and also researched this topic for a chapter in one of my books, I think for the first book. Players were impacted. You see, things were happening. Like, I'll give you an example. I'm sure you've heard it or read it somewhere, maybe in one of my pieces. In 1971, during Pakistan's tour of England in June, July, the civil war had already heated heated up in former East Pakistan. And there was this player, this opener, a very talented opener, who's now a very fiery lawyer called Aftab Gul. He was the opener. And he was at the time also a student leader, interestingly. In fact, when he made his test debut in 1968, he was a student of the Punjab University, and there was a whole people's left-wing movement against the Ayub Khan dictatorship going on. So he somehow made it to the team. He was very talented. So during that 1971 tour, the English Cricket Board, or one of the charity organizations, I'm not sure, wanted the Pakistani players to sign a bat, so they can auction it and collect money for there was some, I think, huge monsoon rains in East Pakistan at the time. So they were collecting money, charity money, so help the people of East Pakistan, which was still part of Pakistan, of course. So Aftab Gul refused to sign the bat. They said, no, you are going to give this money to the Bengali nationalists, Bengali militants who were fighting the West Pakistani military. So there was a huge, almost diplomatic incident happening, and some other players also refused. Inzamam was the captain. He sort of pleaded that he cannot do that. So, and Yahya Khan was the president at the time. He sort of ordered that either you sign the damn bat or you get out. So in the end, I think everybody else signed the bat. Aftab Gul didn't sign the bat. So that happened, but it didn't stop from East Pakistan from separating from the rest of the country in December 1971. And then during the 70s, after the East Pakistan debacle, that's how we explain it in Pakistan, politics, ethnicity sort of reared its head. There was an insurgency in Balochistan, a very serious one. And there were Sindhi nationalists who were trying to make a lot of noise, even though the new Prime Minister, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto himself, was a Sindhi, so he managed to sort of neutralize that. And this politics of ethnicity, which had broken out after 1971, due to the fragmentation in Pakistani politics after the fall of Ayub Khan dictatorship and after the fall of East Pakistan, this impacted the Pakistan team a lot, because for almost a decade and a half, there was this tussle between Karachi and Lahore, for example. And when I say Karachi and Lahore, I mean Sindh and Punjab, because Lahore is Punjab. But interestingly, Karachi is capital of Sindh, but it has an Urdu-speaking majority. So when there was this thing going on between Karachi and Lahore, it meant basically between the Muhajir, the Urdu speakers, which are called Urdu speaking players versus the Punjabi speaking players. So that went on for a decade and a half and became some serious, very serious. If you remember in the 1982 rebellion against the Miandad captaincy, when 10 players refused to play, a lot of press in Karachi accused the so-called Punjabi Lahore lobby, and the Lahore lobby accused the Karachi. These things were happening. They were being impacted. And I personally know that people like Mushtaq and Miandad, these guys were very pro-People's Party. They were very pro-Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and they didn't hide that. People like Sarfraz Nawaz, who would actually go on after retirement and join the People's Party. So they were being impacted by politics and what was happening in Pakistan. But like I say, the fragmentation of politics in Pakistan had started to impact the team as well. There were groups, definitely. And then there was, of course, the class difference as well. Then you had the Oxford-educated, upper middle class people like Majid Khan and let's say Imran and a few others, Salim Altaf. And then you had the more, let's say, I don't know how to put it, lower middle class urbanites like Javed Miandad and Mushtaq. So these sort of tussles used to happen. But that's why I'm saying that was so amazing that how Mushtaq actually managed to, at least for 2-3 years, to gel the team together. He did almost what Lloyd did with the West Indies, getting a very fragmented team of different islands gelling together for a cause. So they were being impacted, definitely. Politics was there, impacting and influencing how the players behaved.
Very, very interesting. You have, of course, also written quite a bit about the Lahore versus Karachi thing, and where you mentioned that a lot of the talk around that is quite simplistic because it's not just city-based or state-based; it's also class-based and
It is.
sophistication-based, and
Yeah.
how also often it is a battle between the media rather than the players.
Exactly. You see, exactly. Even though, I would say, like, people like, especially the Karachi players, they actually believed that there was a lobby in Lahore which was conspiring against, let's say, the Karachi players. They actually believe. Miandad believes it. Mushtaq believes it. You read it in the books. You see it in their statements. They believed it, and I think to a certain extent that might be true. But then one thinks, like, let's go back to the 1982 rebellion against Miandad. I remember that very well. I was in the stadium during the first test match when about 10 Pakistani players didn't play, and there was a whole new team coming in, playing a test match against the test debutant, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was in Pakistan in 1982 winter. And I remember I was sitting in the general stand, and with all these people burning the pictures of Majid and Imran, and accusing the Punjabi lobby of working against Karachi's Javed Miandad. But then, if you read the names of the rebelling players, a lot of them were Urdu speaking and were from Karachi as well. You know, like Sikandar Bakht was Urdu speaking in Karachi. There was Mohsin Khan who was Urdu. So so I don't understand exactly how did that work, how lobbies work, because there were players from Karachi who also rebelled against Javed Miandad. So they don't have an answer for that. But you see, it was easy when there's very little information coming out, so people make up their own theories. And you're right, most of the fighting was done in the Urdu newspapers than it was actually done in the dressing room, I personally believe. And but like I said, people like Mushtaq and Javed Miandad believed it, and they still believe it.
Okay, interesting. Talking about Javed Miandad, though, and given your expertise in the cultural as well as cricketing realm, how much of a difference did that 1986 victory in Sharjah make? Not only for the cricket in Pakistan, but also for the way the team was looked at and the kind of impact that it had on the people overall. That last ball six.
Yeah, that was such a fairy tale match as far as Pakistan cricket is concerned. But by that time, I remember we used to be very frustrated because we knew that a new team has come up and it was a very good team. And Imran had molded a fantastic team after Mushtaq's retirement and all the trials and tribulations of Miandad's captaincy. Imran had molded a pretty strong team, and it really wasn't winning the amount of matches as far as ODI is concerned. We started doing very well in Test matches, but ODI is concerned, we weren't really performing as well as that team had the potential to. So that was sweet, that victory, and it would have been very frustrating had we not won that game. But again, it was another turning point in Pakistan cricket. Now that turning point was that it popularized cricket in areas in Pakistan where cricket was not taken seriously. Like, for example, the frontier area, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the Pashtun belt in the north, or in Balochistan, or interior Sindh, or in these small towns in Punjab. That is why after 1986, after that match in Sharjah, when cricket actually exploded in other areas of the country, outside Karachi or Lahore and other urban centers, that's why we started seeing all these new cricketers who were started to come in. They were really not coming from Karachi and Lahore. They were coming from these small towns in Punjab and in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And that still goes on. Karachi and Lahore players are now, who used to dominate the sides. They're hardly there. now you get most of your players from these little rugged areas in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or these little villages and towns in Punjab. So that is what that six did for cricket in Pakistan.
Yeah, I mean, in India, actually, I think Pakistan was ahead of the curve on that regard, because in India we started seeing that happening in the mid '90s or late '90s. Somebody like people like Harbhajan Singh and Zahir Khan were some of the early examples of people coming on from the small towns. But I mean, of course, there were exceptions before. But in Pakistan, I think the general trend started probably in the late '80s.
Exactly. Like I said, after 1986, cricket and was televised, and this whole hype around that six. I mean, cricket was glamorized, and again, the unfortunate bit is it was so glamorized, it was so overpowering that poor hockey started to suffer. I don't know what the reason for downfall of hockey in India is, but I know this played a role as well to sort of totally undermine hockey. And hockey players were not taken seriously after that. They were never given as much airtime or money. So it not only popularized cricket, glamorized it in Pakistan, but it also sort of undermined a lot of other sports, especially hockey, which was unfortunate. And
it's interesting you say that. Didn't Pakistan win a World Cup in hockey in the mid '90s?
Yes, they did. That was the last time they won. They had won it 3 times. That's why I say it won in 1971, and then it won again. Then it I think won 2 World Cups in a row, and then from 1978 and 1982, and hockey was way ahead of cricket as far as popularity is concerned. It was still drawing more people. I remember watching hockey games packed at this stadium in Karachi, which is called Hockey Club of Pakistan. I don't think it's being used for years now, but it was packed, and people thought that this is a great game, man. It gets over in an hour or 90 minutes, and Pakistan is fantastic in it. But of course, there are other reasons as well, because hockey started to change as well when the extra turf came in and they started changing the rules. But unfortunately, I think India and Pakistan were quick to adapt to the changes happening in cricket, but they weren't really all that open-minded as far as the changes in hockey is concerned. So they were left behind because now it was all about power and not skill. And we didn't have the power, but we had the skill. But as we see now, hockey is all about, it's like power tennis. We don't see McEnroes playing tennis anymore. You see these huge power rackets and these powerful guys playing tennis and hockey. So unfortunately that happened. But cricket, we were quick to adjust. And in fact, I would say we became very innovative as well. And this innovative mindset, as far as concerned, was actually instilled by captains like Mushtaq, and then definitely by Imran Khan, who was inspired by fantastic, great captains like Ian Chappell, who used to experiment, play mind games. So cricket, the thinking about cricket, how to make it exciting, that thinking became very innovative. And it was always, in the end, it was only cricket that was left. Even it bypassed squash, unfortunately, which Pakistan dominated for over a decade. But a lot of people didn't like watching it. They loved playing it. At least I loved playing it. But in the end, it's just about cricket now, isn't it?
Just a related point on that. You do write about how cricket became the central piece of Pakistan's passion. And you also talk about how the pop culture kind of pretty much moved away once Zia-ul-Haq's tenure came through. And hockey went back in the radar as well. And as you're talking about squash as well. How do you make sense of the fact that Zia-ul-Haq brought this extremely conservative sort of reign? And that coincided with a very flamboyant, mercurial Pakistan team, which had playboys and people who enjoyed their drink and who enjoyed their parties. How do you make sense of this coexistence and in some ways the rise of the cricket team as the preeminent attraction in Pakistan during the same tenure as a dictator?
Yeah, like I said, I've written about it somewhere as well, either in the book or some articles. I grew up in the 1980s. I entered my teens, actually, in the 1980s, and it was a very contradictory time. Of course, we had this so-called Afghan jihad going on, ironically funded by the CIA, and not so ironically by Saudi Arabia. So that money was coming in. And then there we had a very conservative guy as a very cleverly conservative guy, Zia-ul-Haq as the dictator. But as I mentioned earlier, television, of course, you saw now more Maulvis sitting on television than before, but there was a lot of entertainment programs going on, a lot of music as well. There were movies being shown, and cricket, of course. And I grew up in that period, and I'm telling you, I did everything which a lot of young people can't do in Pakistan today. So basically, it was an eyewash. All that Islamization thing. Of course, in the long run, it did damage Pakistan's society. But I personally think Zia-ul-Haq was not really a very committed Islamic ideologue. He wasn't. He was using religion just to stay in power. Because I'll tell you something about Zia-ul-Haq. He was an avid TV watcher. He used to watch all the plays. There was a very famous satire show in those days called 50-50 in Pakistan television. And the producer of that show once told me when I was in this newspaper called The News in the 1990s, and I was, I think, interviewing him, or I was there at a press conference or something. So he said that Zia-ul-Haq used to watch every episode of 50-50 and within 5 minutes call the producer and say that, oh, that joke was not that great, but that joke, what do you meant by that? You see, he was a strange character. He was also
he sounds like the American president.
Exactly. But he was smart. He was smart because he knew the power. You see, television was king. There was just one channel. It was a very different time. So he understood the power of that. And for example, Nazi and Sohaib, when they became very big in the early 1980s, Nazi Hassan and Sohaib Hassan, he allowed them to be big. He didn't care if Radio Pakistan was playing their disco songs. In fact, one of his ministers complained that, Radio Pakistan is playing these songs and PTV is showing these videos, and this is actually contradicting your whole Islamization project. Zia said, okay, so what do you want me to do? He said, we should ban them. Zia said, fine, ban them. So the poor brother and sister duo, who were just 16, 17 at the time, they were banned. And but their parents wanted to meet Zia and asked them to lift the ban. And Zia very readily met them. And he met Nazi and Zohaib, and he said, fine, within a few months, the ban was lifted by General Zia-ul-Haq. And a lot of his ministers didn't like that. So he was a strange character. He wasn't an ideologue. He was a Machiavellian dictator who was just using religion because he knew a lot of people would actually believe it. And he wanted to make Saudi Arabia happy as well. He wanted to make United States happy as well because, like I said, there was this whole jihad thing going on. He wanted the money to keep coming in because a lot of generals were getting very rich and a lot of people were getting very rich because there was a trickle-down effect as well. So, and like I said, I'm not surprised we had such a flamboyant team in the 1980s because I personally led a very flamboyant life as a young man in the 1980s. Of course, it wasn't all that easy to do a lot of things, but we got away with a lot of things which a lot of young people in this day and age in Pakistan under democracy cannot. So these are the ironies about, and I would one day write in detail about this, what I really mean by this and why this happened.
Yeah, I think an NFP memoir is in order now. So now that
actually, we've got two ideas from this podcast. One is NFP memoir, and one is an NFP book on Wasim Raja.
Yeah. If you read my first book, that's almost a memoir, and I sort of get into this topic of how, but I think it needs a bit more investigation because it's strange that a lot of people who haven't read much of my work, they come and they say, oh, you're always lambasting Zia-ul-Haq. I said, no, I don't. I'm not always lambasting Zia-ul-Haq. I know there are so many complexities involved in what happened to Pakistan as far as religion is concerned, as far as democracy is concerned. But Zia is not the only one to be blamed. And let me tell you, all these things you read in my book, I was doing in the 1980s. And I'm not talking about the 1970s because I was just a child in the 1970s, even though I had a great childhood in the 1970s. But all those things which I'm writing about and what the Pakistan team was up to, it was all being done in the 1980s. I'll tell you something. In 1986, when Pakistan came back from Australia, Imran was captain, we had this brilliant player called Qasim Umar. And I think he had a falling out with Imran. And that's not a very good idea, having a falling out with Imran. So Imran sort of chucked him out because he won't listen to Imran. And so he held a press conference in Karachi, and he said that the Pakistani teams are like decadent, and they get women in their rooms, and they smoke dope, and they drink like fish. And it was all in the newspapers, especially the Urdu newspapers sort of highlighted it, but Zia got him banned. Zia got Qasim banned because Imran Khan doing so well as a captain was very good for Zia's government. So that is how he thought, that he will not let go of this thing because Pakistan cricket team was performing well. They had a great captain and people are busy with cricket. So why would he let anybody destroy anything, no matter what Qasim said and no matter what he said, the so-called un-Islamic things the team did? He didn't care. And it was Zia who actually brought Imran back from retirement as well in 1987 when during 1987 when for the first time Imran retired. It was Zia who called him back because Zia still needed Imran for very pragmatic reasons. That is how he was.
Talking about 1987 and Imran's retirement, I mean, a lot has been written about both the 1986 win with Javed Miandad 6 as well as, of course, the 1992 World Cup win. But somehow in the middle of it, there seems to have been lost the depth of feeling and emotion and pain that went into that 1987 defeat in the semi-final in Lahore, especially with Imran retiring. And, tell us about how that was, because it seems that even the players themselves, and Imran too, didn't realize till that point how much cricket and that team meant to people in Pakistan, because the kind of dejection after that game seems to have been immense.
No, I think the dejection was because they had realized how much it meant. Because you see, before that World Cup, Pakistan had defeated England, won a series against England in England for the first time. It had won a series in India against India for the first time. So there were a lot of expectation. It was a fantastic team. It gelled well, it played well, it was dynamic, it was flamboyant, etc., etc. And there were a lot of expectations. And Pakistan entered the World Cup, 1987 World Cup, as favorites, and they were playing it on home turf. I think, we were all depressed, and Imran was depressed and shocked as well. But like I said, I think so was General Zia-ul-Haq, because imagine what that victory would have been for the dictator. It would have been marvelous for him. So that's exactly. And that's why he was quick to get Imran back in the side before the West Indian tour. He didn't want, because Pakistan was he missed the series against England, but it was a home series. But Pakistan was to tour West Indies. Now, West Indies in those days was a powerhouse. And that would have been, you see, that's how Zia-ul-Haq thought, that had Pakistan goes and has lost the World Cup and then goes as thrashed by the West Indies, he will lose the control he has over people, at least as far as television is concerned, or via television. And so it was all very, very complex. So that the shock was there were a lot of expectation. And I personally thought that Pakistan could have and should have won that World Cup, because I think that was the best side in the tournament at the time.
And how ironical that General Zia never lived to see Pakistan win that World Cup in '92.
Yes.
That he would have been thrilled to bits with that one.
Had he been around, but you see, I think the Americans got because times were changing. The one war was folding up, so he wasn't required anymore. And Benazir Bhutto had come back, and again at that time when Benazir, when Zia passed away, when his plane crashed, I was, I think, 21 years old. Not sure. Yeah, 21 years old, and our new hero was Benazir Bhutto. And the whole new generation was coming up, and they were definitely wanting something new. That is when this whole pop thing also broke out after Zia passed away. All of a sudden, you saw this flood of bands and musicians just pour out of nowhere. Some amazing stuff came out afterwards. It was like everybody was just waiting. So this whole new generation had come up, and I don't know, had Zia lived, I'm not sure what else he would have offered this new generation. I don't think cricket or any television show would have cut it, or maybe, who knows, they would have totally changed, because being the pragmatic guy he was, he could have just changed. He said, okay, fine, I've used Islam, now let's use something else. I don't know. I know what would happen, but I think his time had come, and he realized it, especially after the Afghan war started to sort of end. He knew his game is up, and it's unfortunate the way he went, but he had to go.
Would you say that the late 80s, early 90s was, perhaps the high point of Pakistani music and the culture as well?
Music, yes. Yes. And I would say, late 80s, early 90s, some fantastic stuff. You see, like I said, throughout the 80s, Pakistan television had produced some excellent plays. Now, the great thing about that is that they were working in a very restricted manner. So they needed to be very smart about things. So the satire had more bite. They had to dodge the censors. Like, we had people like Anwar Maqsood, for example, who made his name, who had been writing scripts since 70s, but who actually came into himself, became big in the 1980s, because he found the formula in a clever way how to dodge the censors. And sometimes censors would let go of certain things, and Zia would pick it up, and he would call Anwar Maqsood, why did you say this? And didn't say much to Anwar Maqsood, but he would sort of get hold of the censor. So you were working in this restrictive area, so you needed to be always on your toes and be very smart and use your brain a lot. And I think that made some very compelling, or I would say symbolic content, which came out in shape of music and plays. And then during the first Benazir Bhutto government, I think that little patch of 2-3 years, we saw this whole pop culture just explode out of nowhere, especially from urban middle class areas in Pakistan. It was very rich music, and most of the guys were really not trained musicians. They just learned as they went on. But there was all of a sudden a lot of audience for this. We had festivals. A lot of young people don't believe it. We had these open festivals with 10 bands and about 10,000 people in Karachi and Lahore. So that was an exciting time. But at the same time, it also became a very violent time, because the Afghan war ended, and we started receiving the blowback. Then the whole Kashmir issue started. So it was a weird time. It was a very surreal time. Some good things came out, but there was also a lot of violence which started to take place, especially in Karachi, on ethnic basis and sectarian basis. So it was a weird time, 1990s. And like I said, it also impacted the cricket team as well in the 1990s. Again, a lot of people, and I agree with them, we had a fantastic cricket team in the 1990s, one of the most powerful, and it underachieved, because the way it was impacted, what was happening in Pakistani politics, and and how the players were responding. There was another rebellion against Javed Miandad in 1993. Then there was a rebellion against Wasim Akram in 1994. Then this whole the match fixing thing came in. Then there was also a time where out of 11 players, at least 6-7 had already been captain. So it was a confusing time. That team could have gone on to do wonders had it not behaved the way it unfortunately did.
So talking about match fixing, you have mentioned and written that maybe one of the reasons for the such a widespread nature of match fixing was the fact that the game actually spread to various parts. And when you had people coming in from small towns, not that educated, easy to fall into trap of money because they were coming from slightly more humbler backgrounds. Is that something that we can? Is that one of the reasons you look at as why match fixing became so rampant?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was one reason. And also, you see, you had a very strong team. So if you make it to the team and you're coming from a poor background, you're coming from a struggling background and from a small town, you're not sure that you will be able to sort of cement your place in the team, and you might lose it all. One bad inning or one bad spell of bowling, one bad series, and you're out, and you lose everything. So I think some people became very insecure, and they said, okay, fine, let's make the best of it. If someone is offering me money to throw away a match or spot fixing or match fixing, whatever, let's take it. Nobody cares. And again, the 1990s, like I said, in Pakistan was a bit of a confusing period. There was a lot of corruption as well everywhere. A corruption which actually was in a way institutionalized during Zia's time, but became very rampant in the 1990s. So it was a very cynical period as well, and so there was insecurity. So the American money had stopped coming in. The Saudi money was not as much as it was in 1980s. So the economy was struggling. There was a tussle between the civilian rulers and the military. So that impacted the players as well, especially coming from small towns. And it's not only about players who just come in. I'm also talking about players who had actually established themselves in the team. Like you had Salim Malik was one of the best batsmen in the side, even in the 1990s. Why would he need to do what he did? Same question I will ask, why did Azharuddin need to do what he did? Or why did Hansi Konya need to do what he did? They were like established stars. They were making okay money. But I think there was inbuilt insecurity in them, inherent security in them because of the kind of background they came from, because they were always scared that whatever they have, they'll lose it, so make the best of it. And they justified themselves that, they're not actually doing any harm to their team. They're just throwing away a few matches or maybe whatever. So I think, the background of the players did matter, I think, because I can't see players of the late 1970s or 1980s doing this, or at least early 1980s doing this, no matter what the background. I think the culture of corruption had seeped in cricket as it did in football, international football, or maybe even baseball in the United States.
Was it also around the time, with all the fixing, with so much talk happening, would you also say that was around the time when the whole cynicism around the Pakistani team began? Because, ever since then, it seems to be whenever Pakistan loses a match or a big match, and we can talk about the 1999 World Cup final or the 1996 quarterfinal against India, it always seems to be attributed to fixing. There is there are very few people who actually look at the cricketing problems. It's just, they threw the match for money.
I think that's become, I don't know if I want to call it a fashion or not. That's the first knee-jerk reaction. If something happens, you don't, if something happens that you don't like it, you call it some sort of conspiracy. We can seeing it now happening with the COVID-19 thing. A lot of people who are sick and tired of sitting inside home and not being able to go out and doing whatever, they've started saying, it's a hoax. So it's that stupid knee-jerk reaction. But you see, the 1999, why it happened was because there was already an inquiry going on against a lot of players in the side which played in the 1999 World Cup final against Australia. So it was always on the cards that Pakistan lost. There was always going to be talk about match fixing and everything. In fact, recently, I don't know who it was, some player I don't remember, who actually said that the 1999 World Cup, a few of the matches were fixed, like the match against Bangladesh, which Pakistan lost. I don't know which player recently said that. So, but you see, the thing is, there's never been any evidence. The evidence was there and action was taken. Salim Malik was thrown out. There was another player, Taur Rahman, was thrown out. But some players were saved, like Inzamam and Wasim Akram and Mushtaq and Saknan. There were some players, Saeed Anwar, they were like given the benefit of the doubt. But everybody was involved. And the funniest thing is that Australians used to make a lot of noise in those days that all these guys are on the take. But it turns out that a lot of Australians later on, we found out, were also involved in what was going on in the 1990s. It was a mad time. Suddenly, so much money had come into cricket all of a sudden, because I remember Pakistan cricket board was flushed with money. There was a lot of sponsorship. There were all kinds of characters. I remember going to the stadium, watching the games during the 1996 World Cup in India and Pakistan. And how strange characters you would see in the stands, even in Sharjah especially. A lot of hanky-panky going on there. But you see, the thing is how there's been a lot written on it, but no conclusive evidence has come out as such. I think there was definitely match fixing going on. People were taking money. Players were involved. But how exactly it happened, nobody's really written about it, exactly how it happened. Who was involved and who should have been fired and who shouldn't have been fired. There's so many questions. Like a lot of people think that Wasim Akram should have been the first one to be banned for life. I don't know. Maybe, but he wasn't. Again, politics coming in maybe. Wasim Akram was definitely your finest player in the 1990s. It was bad for the country's image. You kicked out a player who was actually single-handedly winning you games. So all these things come into the equation. But there is no doubt 90s was a dirty decade, especially in cricket, I would say. Even though personally speaking, and everybody, I agree, Pakistan had one of the finest teams and it underachieved due to this nonsense of match fixing and personal politics. And then, of course, we get into the next stage of Pakistan cricket. I'm sure you guys will be interested in that, where guilt comes in and then it is washed away by...
Exactly, right? Yeah. I mean, this is almost like, it's like a movie. It's like a Bollywood movie where you have all the guilt and then you have the sudden pious and religious strand to it.
Absolutely. You see, the whole Saeed Anwar thing started, Saeed Anwar confesses that he lied. And unfortunately, his daughter, a newborn daughter, passed away. So he saw that as God's punishment and he got into religion and started speaking weird stuff. But at least he admitted. But let me talk about it. Actually kicks in during Inzamam's captaincy. Now, a lot of people say, and have written that fine, Inzamam became a poster boy of these evangelists, the Islamic evangelists called the Tablighi Jamaat. Yes, he did. But I see it in a different way. I see Inzamam as the Zia-ul-Haq of Pakistan cricket. As funny as it is. Okay. You know what? Because here you have Pakistan loses the 2003 World Cup badly under Waqar's captaincy. It's chucked out. It performs miserably. And Inzamam is made captain after Rashid Latif, I think, was chucked out. Is made captain of this totally volatile, flamboyant group of individuals who are crazy, and there are like match fixing accusations going on. There's a lot of drinking going on. So he doesn't know. He comes from a very humble background and he enjoyed everything before that. He was part of everything, but he knows that this will not go on. And I think he used the religious card, the manner in which Zia-ul-Haq used the religious card, to sort of bring some sort of order to control the team, Because you see, he could have said anything to the team, giving them pep talks, etc. But they would have always been that volatile squad that they had become. But if you give an ultimatum that what you're doing is against faith, so coming from a small town, you would say, oh my God, that's true. I cannot do this because this is against my faith. He used religion to consolidate and cement his position as a captain. And for that, he also kept some of the players out as well, who he thought might challenge his captaincy. In that manner, Inzamam is seen as a jolly guy, blah, blah, blah. But I think he was also a very clever captain in this way. I don't think he was a very smart captain. He was a brilliant, he's still one of my favorite batsmen. But he was a very clever captain as well in this respect. And of course, it sort of got blown out of proportion, as happens with every time you bring in any religious ideology and use it politically. There will always be a time where it'll blow up in your face. And it happened eventually. But I think otherwise it was a very clever ploy by him to establish his position and to be taken seriously by growing a beard and moving around with evangelists. And how would you criticize a guy like that? Because it would mean if you criticize him, then you're criticizing the faith. This is how he maneuvered it. I thought that was very clever of him. So that's why I call him the Zia-ul-Haq of Pakistan cricket. As odd it might sound.
But how much of an impact it had on the cricket sort of commentary around that time? Was that an important point in the general cricketing ecosystem at large? For instance, you write about Bob Woolmer saying that he couldn't discuss strategies because everybody wanted to go pray. But at the same time, he also said that this brings a certain semblance of discipline to the team.
It's easy, and I would say there was a lot of hypocrisy as well in the team because everybody started to pray, but at the same time, they were doing other hanky-panky stuff as well. But they wanted to look good in front of General Inzamam, pray in front of him to remain in the good books. That was the cynical bit. But I will also say the hypocrisy was also seen in certain commentators as well. Ramiz, I remember, used to praise this a lot. Oh, it has gelled the team. It has gotten a very fragmented side together, blah, blah, blah. In the early statements of Bob Woolmer, late Paul Woolmer, he actually praises Inzamam of doing this. He says that it has made the players more concentrated, more disciplined. It has made Mohammad Yusuf, former Yusuf Johanna, a better batsman, etc., etc. But after a few years, both Ramiz and Woolmer started to criticize this culture. It was always on the cards. You see, if you let this thing happen, it will expand because the people they were involved in or the people who were spreading this, it is their agenda to get as many poster boys as possible because this is an organization we're talking about which used to just be on the fringes once upon a time, but from 1990s started to sort of go for sportsmen, and now it's going for celebrities as well in Pakistan, and prime ministers. But it was always on the cards. And yes, if you read the media manager, PJ Mir was the media manager of the Pakistan cricket team during the 2007 disastrous World Cup where poor Bob Woolmer passed away. And I remember reading his report, and it was amazing. He wrote that a lot of players were more interested in going out and converting West Indian, because that World Cup took place in West Indies, going out and converting people to Islam than they were in playing cricket. He said that, yeah, and they say that, so of course they would be, because they thought that the power lay in what they did. And even if you read the former Pakistan cricket chairman Shahryar Khan's book, I forgot the name of the book.
The Cricket Cauldron, right?
Yeah. He discusses this in detail, how this went out of hands. And like you had Saeed Anwar saying that you lost to India because, before in a match against India during the 2003 World Cup, Saeed Anwar was quoted saying that angels will come down and help us defeat India. When India defeated, and Shahryar asked Saeed, where are your angels? He said, they didn't come because you're a bad Muslim. So these sort of things, sort of things should have been taken as signs, but they weren't.
So Sachin Tendulkar's innings and Rahul Dravid's innings did not matter at all in that match.
Absolutely. You see, this fatalistic mindset. It works.
I mean, given the current political climate in India, I'm sure a lot of Indians would like to claim that Sachin was a good Hindu.
Yes.
Exactly. I'm sure that would have been the case. Thank God it wasn't. But imagine that match taking place and the the kind of stuff you see on social media would have been just about Muslim Hindu stuff. And of course, the player's own capabilities and abilities will go out the window, not realizing that God has given everybody the ability to think and play or whatever. But it was, you see, that fatalistic thinking worked for Inzamam. If you lose, well, maybe because we weren't good Muslims. If you win, well, boys played well, and thanks, exactly, whatever. But that was an interesting period as well, which was, for a while, for a bit, in a very intelligent manner, eroded by Misbah when he became captain. Totally pragmatic man, totally down-to-earth guy. I don't think I interviewed him once for about 3-4 hours in Dubai. The man had zero ideology. All he knew about was cricket and strategy, and that's about it. He had no ideology. You didn't know if the guy was what he thought about how big a Muslim he was, or was he very demonstrative? He wasn't demonstrative at all. He has become a bit now, but he wasn't very demonstrative. And that's the kind of team we got under Misbah, purely cricketing side, who just thought about cricket, and he didn't care what you did after you played your cricket. You wanted to go to a mosque and pray 5 times, go ahead and do it, because Misbah prayed as well. If you want to go to a bloody nightclub and drink your heart out, go ahead. But as long as you perform on the field, and you don't get into things like politics and especially match fixing and all that shit, which he stopped, which is amazing. Because if you remember that the important thing is, because why I rate Misbah higher than Imran and Mushtaq is the way he came in at the time he came in when as captain. Because remember, he was made captain in 2011. The Sri Lankan attack had happened. Pakistan was in a grip of terrorist attacks. No team was willing to come to play Pakistan in Pakistan. Pakistan's image was shattered. There were bomb blasts happening almost every second, third day. I don't know how that country survived, how we survived here. The intensity of terrorism, which was in the name of religion, which was going on in this country. The politics had been blown to bits. Economy was in the doldrums, and 3 of Pakistan top players were in jail: Amir, Salman Butt, and the great Muhammad Asif, a wasted talent. So that is where Misbah was called. And he himself told me that after Afridi had failed as ODI captain and had refused to lead the test side, because after Salman Butt had been thrown out into jail, Misbah was actually taken to a washroom of a dressing room in Dubai and asked the chairman of the board at the time, I don't know what his name was, Ijaz Ahmad or something. No, forgot his name.
Ijaz Butt.
Ijaz Butt. And asked to lead the side. And at the time, Misbah was, I think, in his mid-30s, 34, 35 years old. And it was remarkable. This guy couldn't find a place in the side after he was kicked out in 2002, 2003. He couldn't find a place in the side. He was in and out, never taken seriously. And he wasn't in the side, by the way, when he was made captain. He wasn't in the side which went to England and played England. A series against England and a series against Australia in England. He wasn't in the side. He wasn't even in the side. But it's remarkable that he managed to carry on. Actually, it was the most strange team I've ever seen. Like, Pakistani team have always been, known for their flamboyance and their outrageous antics. But it was the most level-headed team because of this level-headed guy. Because that was the kind of a head which was actually required in that mad time which Pakistan was going through. And Misbah despite being the most successful test captain in Pakistan, was never able to captain the side in Pakistan. All his games were won and lost outside Pakistan. And he told me in the interview, which he gave me in Dubai in 2014, and he says that a lot of people call the UAE Pakistan's home ground. He says that's nonsense. He says we cannot move freely. We travel here with our passports. We have to leave behind our families. And we have no say, very little say in how the pitch is made. He said it's as almost playing anywhere else outside Pakistan. He said he had no say in how the pitch should behave. Should it turn or should it not? And that's why, you see, regarding the political situation, the terrorism, the match fixing going on, and still managing to carry and construct a whole new side with a whole new attitude. It's amazing. And that is the story I actually want to write, because I've been, when Nadeem Sethi was the president of Pakistan Cricket Board, so he's a good friend of mine. He's also the publisher of my books. I also wanted to tell him that if I could write an authorized biography of Misbah, but that didn't come to pass because then Sethi had to resign after Mr. Imran Khan came in. And I would still love to write that story. You know, it's an amazing story. It's one of the most, people would, of course, would compare Imran. Imran is a great story, of course. Or Javed Miandad, fantastic. Or Mushtaq or Kardar, these are the players. Or Zahid. Misbah was, and I personally think Misbah has the most interesting story. And it's a very noble story, because living in Pakistan, not seeing cricket at all, watching my nephews growing up, nephews who were born after 2008, 2009, they never knew. In fact, he was so excited. My nephew is now almost 10 years old when this whole PSL thing started to happen in Pakistan. And some teams did come in, and he was shocked watching all these stadiums fill up again, because this generation never saw that happening. And the unfortunate bit is your most successful test captain was never able to lead the side in Pakistan. So it's a great story.
Yeah, actually, that's one point I wanted to ask you about the effect that this whole lack of cricket has had on a whole generation, and even on people of your generation who are used to seeing cricket in stadiums and things like that. What kind of tell us a bit about the feeling and of just watching the team on TV, not being able to go to a ground and a packed stadium and experience that joy of seeing your team win, or just seeing a good spell or seeing a good innings. How was
exactly
that?
No, it was terrible. It's terrible. It was really depressing. Some great victories Pakistan won in Dubai, but to empty stadiums. I used to go in Dubai, and I watched a few games there, test games, to empty stadiums with Pakistan playing brilliant cricket over there, and hardly anybody there applauding or appreciating or whatever. And it was sad. It was sad. And I think fans like myself, I'm not a cricket expert, but I'm a big fan. So fans like me were very angry as well. I don't know at what. At our politics, at those people who were running around blowing up things in the name of religion, at our own cricketers, I don't know who. But there was anger as well. So it was amazing watching cricket coming back. And it was more amazing when I see my nephews and all these young people for the first time ever in their lives seeing cricket playing to the packed stadiums and the noise and everything. And it's amazing. I hope we don't lose it. And I hope that this will go on. I personally think it will go on, because I think the reasons why no team was willing to come to Pakistan, and rightly so, I think those reasons, those hurdles have largely been resolved, and I don't see them coming back in the manner they did. So I am hoping that this will go on after this coronavirus thing. It's unfortunate that it has put a halt to it, but let's see. But I would still like to write that book on Misbah, definitely, because it's not only, it won't be only about Misbah, it'll be about the whole period he spent from 2011 to 2017, where Pakistan went through this great turmoil. And to a large extent, the manner in which Misbah managed to overcome these problems, the Pakistani state also did manage to at least get rid of the physical aspects of the threat, if not the mindset, which is still out there. And now we're seeing that sort of mindset even in India and the United States. And all I want to tell these guys is this is not a very good mindset. This is not a very healthy mindset. And it always ends up very badly. So let's hope things get better.
Yeah, so one, talking about volatile, mercurial, I mean, one cricketer I probably want to talk to you about, and maybe we can wrap up at some point after that, is Afridi. For nearly 2 decades, he was very much part of the Pakistan side, and more importantly, part of the conversation. I mean, even if Afridi is not in the side, he's always mentioned, there's always a joke about him or some reference to him. He's there in the public consciousness. What do you make of Afridi? I mean, do you see him as an underachiever? Do you see him as an overachiever? Do you see him as somebody who, just happened to, by the force of his personality, just make it through? How do you assess a character like that?
I think he's an underachiever because he's an underachiever. But I don't know, fortunately, unfortunately, his start to his career was very, he had a blazing start, making that fastest ODI century, which remained a record for quite a while, 96, 97. So, but you see, if you see his test career in the beginning, he was a pretty decent opener. He wasn't all guns blazing all the time. He was an attacking player, yes, but a pretty decent player. But you see, Afridi is very self-conscious. He knows how to construct his own image. He wants to always remain in the picture. So he imagined himself that, oh wow, I'm this amazing dasher, and people expect this from me, and this is what will keep me in the limelight, and this is what will keep me in the game, because the game requires people like him. And definitely that is true. The way the game is evolving, there's definitely more room for people like Afridi than people like Misbah in the future, especially. So he understood how cricket was evolving. And that's why I would say he was an underachiever. I think he retired from Test cricket too soon. He would have been an incredibly exciting Test cricketer, because to me, that is real cricket. ODI, T20, yes, he says it comes naturally to him. Fine, it comes naturally to him. I've always enjoyed his batting. But I would say he's an underachiever. But he's very good, very, very professional in promoting himself. Even when he's retired from all forms of game, he's still playing professional T20 in Pakistan, PSL, and some other Premier Leagues. And now there are hints that he might also be interested in entering politics. So he's already thinking there. He doesn't want to leave the stage. He wants to always be there. And that's the kind of intoxication which he enjoys, and he's going to sort of make it last, because I see him entering politics if nothing, because he thinks he can do a great job. I don't know how he'll enter it, but he's already started. He's got a fantastic following still. He has a great way of. He's a great PR machine, and he's got the charm. He's got the image. He's got everything. So I think he's got what he wanted from cricket. Now he wants more, and he thinks like Imran Khan, maybe he'll get it from politics. I personally think that's a terrible idea because Imran Khan is definitely not the Imran Khan which young men like me used to sort of admire as a cricket captain. He's definitely changed Imran Khan and it's totally taking the sting out of him. So maybe this is how Afridi will stop being Afridi after he gets into politics. Who knows? But he wants to remain in the picture.
Intriguing. Expand a bit on that, about the Imran Khan point, because I'm interested to know how somebody like you, who saw him, pretty much start out his career, how he has changed for you now in the political realm.
Imran Khan, you see, the generation which actually supported him is the generation which grew up after 1992. So many of them weren't even most probably born when he won the 1992 World Cup. So they saw all these repeat highlights of 1992 World Cup and idealized him. And very few of them even know what Imran Khan was before the 1992 World Cup, because you have to remember that in 1992 Imran was 40, and already to retire. It was a very different Imran Khan, of course, when he was younger, which is understandable. We all are very, very young, different when we are young. But even thinking-wise, I thought Imran Khan was a very dynamic thinker as a cricketer. Even though a lot of people say that he had a great vice captain, I agree, Javed Miandad was a great vice captain. But Imran was a very innovative thinker. He would do strange things. Like, for example, I've written about this as well. When leg spin bowling had gone out of fashion in Test cricket, Imran got back to this great bowler, the late Abdul Qadir, in 1982. He fought with the selector and said, "No, I want him in because nobody in England remembers now how to play a leg break googly bowler. Abdul Qadir is the guy." So he got Abdul Qadir in the side in the 82 series against England in England. And he told Qadir that I will go out there and call you a wizard. So Qadir said, "What the hell does wizard mean?" So Imran told him the wizard means a magician, etc., etc. Yeah. So and he also said that you grow a French cut beard and a wizard's beard, so you should look the part. That when the English batsmen, when I explain you as a magician and a wizard, they should actually see how they imagine a wizard, that a wizard is coming to bowl to them. So he used to do these sort of things, I remember, and very few people remember this, 1989, after 88, the Kashmir issue started again. And 1989, Imran said that the Kashmir issue should be decided between India and Pakistan on a cricket field. He used to say these outrageous things. So, but he still says outrageous things as prime minister, but they're not as endearing, unfortunately, as they used to when he was captain. Because prime minister of a country like Pakistan is no joke, and he's not even, he's definitely a very different Imran, and he's almost 70 years old as well, so it's understandable. But in some manners, he still reminds me of the same old Imran Khan. He still, like I said, says outrageous things, but as a captain, he used to deliver. But unfortunately, I'm sure what I'm about to say is fans will not like. But as a prime minister, unfortunately, he's not delivering for whatever reason. So that is what I meant.
All right. So we won't get too much into the politics of it, but I think this is a good summary that you've given us. So Nadeem, one last question. We ask all our guests to recommend one book, one cricket book to our listeners. This is something that we've been doing over the last few episodes. And as someone who's so well-read, and I thought you can also recommend a book, a cricket book. It could be about Pakistan. It could be about any place, but just one book that you would like our listeners to pick up.
Two. I would like to recommend two.
Sure.
One is the autobiography of Mushtaq Mohammad. And this is because it's one of the most honest biographies. We get a lot of biographies by all sorts of cricketers, and they're mostly very disappointed because they're looking forward that, okay, fine, they're retired, but they're looking forward to returning to cricket as coaches or managers, so they don't write anything. But Mushtaq, when he wrote the book in 2004, I think, he had retired a long time, so he says everything. It's a very exciting book. Unfortunately, I forgot the name, but it's Mushtaq Mohammad's autobiography, and was, I think, published in 2004, I think so. And the second book is The Art of Captaincy by Mike Brearley. I think it's a brilliant book. Mike Brearley, if you all remember, the very famous, very successful British English captain who couldn't bat, who couldn't bowl, was just a good slip fielder and a fantastic people's manager. And under him, England won some most amazing games, especially during the 1981 series. So he wrote this book called The Art of Captaincy. And I think he's either from he studied psychology in Cambridge, I think. So it's a fascinating book, how to approach captaincy in cricket. And Mahesh, this is also part of the question you asked me about the captain's role in molding the culture of the team in Pakistan. But actually, psychologically speaking, this is also coming from the book which I'm recommending, Mike Redley's Art of Captaincy. He says that in a game like cricket, captains have to play a much larger role than they do, let's say, in hockey or in any other sport. And this might include psychology, politics, etc., etc. These are the two books I would recommend. And these are the two books which I have found the most entertaining and informative as far as I, as a cricket fan, is concerned.
Wonderful. So thank you so much for these, and thank you so much, Nadeem, for this lovely lesson on history, cricket, culture, politics, and everything. I'm sure our listeners would be so thrilled to listen to this and to learn so much from you. And I would urge our listeners to also follow Nadeem on Twitter. I will link his Twitter handle, and also follow his articles on Dawn. They're very illuminating and give you an idea of both politics, culture, and cricket in Pakistan. Thanks again, Nadeem.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
India win. He'll come back for the second. India have won the Test match. India have won the series. They're going to get back for two. India at home. Lords goes wild.